allow me to paint a picture for you before I get to my point. Otherwise, you're just going to think, what's this guy waffling on about? I want to talk about the West Ham ownership. I want to talk about why there's a story that's come out that's not received an awful lot of attention. I want to try and explain why this information is probably very, very important, even though it's been probably swamped by a lot of the other news surrounding West Ham in the past few days because the Premier League's about to start up. I want to talk about Gonzo and Sullivan. Now, there's a bit of a misconception that they earned all their money in the porn industry. They didn't. They earned a lot of it in there, and I think there's been some really funny phrases that were coined by the Sporting Lisbon director of football or president, whoever he might have been, when we tried to make a botched attempt for Willie Carvalho, and he called them the Porn Brothers, which of course is a catchy name. It's funny. It's sort of stuck. And I think there's a misconception that they made not by everyone, but they made all of their money in that industry. They didn't. They were involved in several different industries. I think they've got a really decent property portfolio. Obviously, they were involved, well, I guess if you take in Birmingham City, they've probably been involved in football for 25, 30 years now. So you'd say that's been a business venture for them as well. David Gold, of course, is still heavily involved in Ann Summers, which is not so much the old porn industry as it used to be. It's lingerie, it's things like that. And they still retain some interest in other businesses. But what they used to do was be involved in newspapers in Fleet Street. Not the little small newspapers, national newspapers, either full ownership or part ownership. And that is David Gold and David Sullivan. Now, when they're involved in these newspapers, they wanted, because it's clear they have, whether you think they've done a good job or a bad job at West Ham, they clearly have an interest in sport. And they clearly have an interest in football. So one of the first things they did when they owned a newspaper was they appointed Bobby Moore. Why not? Who better than Bobby Moore to be your football correspondent? Now, obviously, Bobby Moore was a football player and he wasn't a journalist. So what they needed somebody else who could take Bobby Moore's words and they could put them into print. So they hired Hugh Southon, Hugh from Claret and Hugh. Hugh used to, every single game, used to sit next to Bobby Moore. Bobby Moore would say, well, that player's playing well, or, you know, they were unlucky there, good goal, he's played well, he's my man of the match. Bobby Moore would speak throughout the game. Hugh would take notes. Hugh would then put it together, and Hugh would basically write the article. Hugh was Bobby Moore's ghostwriter at the newspaper. He was then going to go on to become head sports editor. I only make this point to demonstrate that Hugh worked for Gonzo Sullivan, directly for Gonzo Sullivan, as a journalist. Literally, he was the guy that they chose. He was the guy on the payroll. Now, don't get me wrong, that was a long, long time ago, but that's also a valid point as well, because he's probably known them, I don't know, 40, 50 years, something like that. And for that reason, I think it's quite important when you read something about the ownership of West Ham, something about Gonzo Sullivan on Claret and Hugh, it probably carries a little bit more punch than some of the other things. Don't get me wrong, there were other. There's someone in the Evening Standard who also is very, very closely linked with the ownership. There's a couple of other journalists as well. But if you're talking about history, that's about as far back as it goes. So no matter how subtle, no matter how vague the article may be, you do have to read a little bit into it and think, oh, what does he know? Hairy baubles, too many needles on your Christmas tree. Father Christmas, I've gone too far. Anyway, this is the time of year when we're going to offer you a whopping 20% discount on all Manscaped products, like this fantastic lawnmower. It's got a Christmas light on it. 4.0, which is significantly better than the Manscaped lawnmower 3.0, by the way. If you go over to manscaped.com, Manscaped's website, and at the point where you get to the checkout, put in the promo code HammersChat, all one word, you get 20% off. It's not just this fantastic lawnmower. They've also got the weed whacker, so if you've got hairs up your hooter, I found a hair in my ear, by the way, then one of these is just for you. They've got deodorants for upstairs, deodorants for downstairs. They've got toners, moisturisers, soaps, boxer shorts, lovely gift bags. Basically, if you're looking for ideas for Christmas presents for somebody that you love and is a little bit hairy, then look no further than manscaped.com. What's he been told here? Maybe it's nothing at all, but maybe, just maybe, this is stuff that's worth having a look at. And the reason I bring this to your attention is because of an article that came along 2 or 3 days ago on Claret and Hugh, and it's about the West Ham ownership, but it's a footnote. It's well down the list and was swamped by other things about David Moyes. David Moyes' interview sort of buried it. News about Mikel Antonio, the Scamacca stuff, the Arsenal game coming up. Because there's nothing sensational. There's nothing sensational in the article. But I want to take you through the articles. The article says exclusive. And bearing in mind what I said at the start of this video, it's a short article, but it's exclusive. Now, it's important to remember that the general consensus up to now has been that David Gold may sell some of his shares. David Sullivan won't sell any of his shares. There's been a suggestion that Daniel Kretinsky could possibly buy some more of the club, and he has first refusal if he chooses to do so. But I've thought for quite some time that the overall ownership of the club will not go to Daniel Kretinsky in 100%. I don't think he's interested. I think he's only bought the shares so as he can sell them on. With that in mind, let me read this article to you. I've got these. Oh, these ones will do. So it says, Claret and Hugh exclusive by Hugh Southam. The lines over a possible West Ham takeover are becoming blurred. It had been believed for some time that the board may be ready to listen to offers in April once the embarrassment clause over selling out no longer applied. I'm just going to assume you know all this stuff already, otherwise I'm going to end up repeating stuff about the embarrassment clause and about the stadium, which I'm going to assume you know. It says we and other media sites had learnt that David Sullivan had no intention of selling all or part of his 38% shareholding, although David Gold was believed to be ready to sell a few of his 25%, according to informed London Stadium sources. So read between the lines as you're armed with that information. Now read between the lines. Daniel Kretinsky was seen to be a likely buyer was seen. So we've got had and was. This is important. Following a £150 million investment in 27% of the shares. So, let's just so it was believed previously that David Sullivan had sold none of his 38%, David Gold might sell some of his 25%, and Daniel Kretinsky bought 27% for £150 million. Here's where it gets interesting. However, recent Claret and Hugh conversations with our key insiders suggest that it may be wrong to entirely rule out a change of ownership. That's really significant, and it's buried under a whole load of other news. It may well be the most significant West Ham news you've heard in quite some time. We were told, inverted commas, there has been no approach, although that's not to say there won't be. And then it goes on to say, however, as there is often the way, there may well be a price offered, and if it's acceptable, it could always happen. Now, that's a very, very short article. In many respects, it says nothing. So why put it up there? Well, why is that article up there? And here's what I believe to be true. And I have to say, I do want to point this out. I've not spoken to Hugh at all. I'm putting two and two together here and coming up with what I perceive to be the end sum, put it that way. I do believe that, okay, if you've got something that's really valuable that other people want, you don't really have to announce it for sale. I don't care whether it's something that's valuable as a football club or it's something you might want to sell on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, whatever the case may be. What you've got is really good, you'll have a line of buyers already there. If it's not and it's good, the moment you declare it's of interest, the first person will snap it up. You do that 7-day auction on eBay, it doesn't last 7 days, it gets snapped up straight away. If you've got something that not many people are buying, you'll start sharing the link, won't you? You can do it on Facebook Marketplace. You can actually say on your Facebook account, oh, I've lit that coffee table, I've listed the coffee table. It's a tenner. Someone come and please pick up the bloody coffee table, right? And I just wonder if there's a little bit of that going on here. It's a bit of an open secret that you can buy shares in West Ham. It's no secret about the embarrassment clause. It's there in black and white. However, with the sale of Liverpool and the sale of Manchester United becoming very, very public knowledge, I do wonder, as I've mentioned before in previous videos, whether or not the interest that there might have been in West Ham has dried up ever so slightly. Also, I wonder if too much misinformation has been put out there. We've heard it time and time again. Some West Ham shares are for sale, but you're not going to get ownership because Sullivan ain't selling. You've heard it before. And I just wonder now, if this is just being put out there, just to actually let people know, actually, that's not true. If you do have enough money, if you can make an offer, Sullivan will sell his shares. That's what this is. That's what this is saying to me. Reading between the lines, because it's very much saying all that original stuff it's all past tense. This is how it is now. There's been no approach, but that's not to say that there won't be. If we were to be offered, and if there were to be an offer and the price offered were to be acceptable, it could always happen, meaning the takeover. That's a for sale sign. That's a for sale board. That is, come and buy the club. Make us an offer. And I think that tells you a number of things. I do appreciate that this is reading an awful lot into very little. But I do think the very little is important considering the source of the information. Or should we say the messenger, not the source of the information, the messenger. Firstly, I think this article, even those few words, is telling us, confirming what I thought all along, Kretinsky is not going to take full ownership of the club. I don't think this is information out there for Kretinsky. I really don't. I'll tell you why. Kretinsky also, I think Kretinsky's possibly not going to buy lots more shares. If what I believe to be true is that Kretinsky is just only going to buy the shares so he can sell them on at a profit, I don't think there's much margin in there for a middleman at the moment. I don't think the demand for West Ham is high enough for Kretinsky to buy more shares at a certain price and then sell them on for a higher price. Let's say Kretinsky did value. I'm just actually trying to work it out now. Let's say Kretinsky at 150 million. Let's say the club is worth 600 million. It's 27%. It's a little bit more, but let's just call it 600 million. If at that share price the club is worth 600 million, Kretinsky's not going to be able to buy the rest of those shares at that share price and then sell the club for $1 billion. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they might have looked at it and thought, oh, whoops, hold on, the club possibly is only worth 600 million. I might be wrong on that. I don't know much about this stuff. So I think, number one, it tells us Kretinsky's not buying the club. Number two, I think it tells us that probably Gold or Sullivan, or possibly both, were rather hoping that he probably would take some more shares because they probably wanted to dilute theirs even further. And number three, I think it also tells us that whoever were intending on coming and buying the shares and buying them off Kretinsky is probably not going to do so anymore. I wouldn't say it's completely panic stations because, let's be fair, none of these people are going down the food bank, right? But I do think it's maybe had a massive force, a bit of a change in emphasis. And the emphasis is that actually the club is for sale. Whilst they don't want to come out ultimately, and this is where it gets, and become so desperate, they say the club's for sale, we need to sell the club. What they want to do is they want to give off that demeanour of saying, look, we're selling something we don't need to. Because they want to keep the price high. The moment you let everybody know that you're desperate to sell it, the price will get driven down. And let's just remember, sorry, I was bloody something flew, I'm not waving at you, I flew in front of my face then. Let's remember, even we were believed to be, the Saudis, who are believed to be the richest club in the world now, sorry, it's Newcastle, it's not Saudi Arabia United, Newcastle United. Even them, they were haggling over 25 million with Mike Ashley. As I understand it, Mike Ashley wanted 305 million, they wanted it at 280, something like that. It was about 25 million. Now, if you are worth billions and billions, why are you haggling over 25 million? I don't know. I just make that point just to suggest that maybe, just maybe, those sorts of finances are very important. And actually, if you're announcing that you're desperate, then you may well be, even by the richest person, might well drive you down, even by 25, 30 million, and that's not what they want. So I do think it's interesting. I don't think this means, I'll tell you exactly what I think it means. Do I think it means West Ham are about to get sold? No. Because I'm not sure there are enough buyers out there to create a feeding frenzy. However, do I think West Ham have now been absolutely put up for sale? The answer is yes.